Which unsolved mystery are you most interested in? Why? Story 1, Brian Schaefer's disappearance from a bar in Columbus. There is no footage of him leaving the bar at all that night, despite there being footage of the one entrance or exit all night, even capturing him leaving and going back into the bar prior to closing. He was a good-looking med student who had everything going for him, and he was 6'2", not likely that he'd get grabbed without someone noticing or become a victim of a random attack. He was never located, and his phone even rang 3 times once when dialed. His friend refuses to sit for a lie detector, and there's speculation that Columbus PD thinks he may be alive. It just feels, sinister. Story 2, Cancerbero's death. Probably most of you don't know about it, given that it happened in Venezuela. So I'll give you a brief explanation. Cancerbero was a famous Venezuelan rapper. In 2015, he was staying with a friend named Carlos and Carlos's wife, Natalia. They had just come from a tour. One day, he fell from the apartment window and died. When the police arrived, they found Carlos dead with multiple stab wounds. Natalia, the only witness, said that Cancerbero was staying with them because he was dealing with schizophrenia. She said that he suddenly went into their room, stabbed Carlos to death, and then jumped out of the window when he realized what he had done. Some weeks later, the case was reopened due to some inconsistencies of the evidence and the testimony. Cancerbero's family claimed that he had no mental illness. The window's glasses had been taken out in order to fit a person through, and someone had put them on again. The $6,000 they had earned on the tour were never found. And Natalia, the only person who knew what happened, left the country a few days after the incident. Story 3, The Voynich Manuscript. It's a book that's totally undeciphered and written in an unknown language, with pictures of plants that aren't any identifiable plants, and other strange things like women coming out of pipes. It's carbon dated to the 1400s, but nothing else is known about its origin, and all attempts to figure it out have been debunked. What if it's just a fiction book with stuff that's completely made up? Imagine if our entire civilization was destroyed, and the only thing left behind was one copy of a Lord of the Rings picture book. Do you reckon people and aliens in the future would think that crap was real? Story 4, a woman in my town went missing a year or so back on St. Patrick's Day. She was at a bar late with friends and went out the back door to take a phone call, and no one has seen her since. It really shook the whole community up, and now we're all just waiting for her body to show up at this point. Other than that, Ramsey, which also happened near me, really gets to me. There was so much time for that family to plan and clean up tracks if they did it. But at the same time, some details don't make sense, like the assault matching none of the family's DNA. I personally think the mom did it, and so do officers that still work in the town. Story 5, The Mysterious Death of Elisa Lamb. She was a Canadian student that traveled to LA and stayed at the Cecil Hotel in downtown Los Angeles, where her body was found in the water tank. She was caught on an elevator camera doing some strange hand motions and generally acting really weird. Something I've been researching with a lot of fascination. I knew a couple who stayed in that hotel at the time. They were actually interviewed by the local news station, CNN, I think. The wife was complaining about the taste of the water and how slippery the water felt. It turned out she was washing, drinking, and brushing her teeth with the water from the water tank with her body decomposing in it. Story 6, Melungeon people in Appalachia. A somewhat dark-skinned, Mediterranean-looking population of people that lived deep in the mountains in western North Carolina that claimed they were the descendants of stranded Portuguese sailors. Their culture was very European, but by all accounts they were there when other white people moved west. Were they actually descended from the runaway slaves? Some think so. Nobody really knows where they came from. They over time intermarried with Cherokee peoples, and their story got forgotten. My grandmother's last name is listed as a common Melungeon name, and her family came from that area 150 years ago. That is why I'm interested. Story 7, Bohemian Grove. You know how we hear about the Illuminati and how they have these secret meetings and rituals and cults? Very true detective stuff. That's Bohemian Grove. It's an actual place that you can Google. It's officially a gentleman's club for the elite. An investigative reporter was able to sneak in once in the 90s, and he got video of a crazy ritual where they were burning a big owl effigy, and everyone was wearing animal masks. There's a video of it, but it's blurry. Definitely psycho crap going on. Story 8, I want to know what happened to Jerry Krause and where he is now. My parents went to church with some of his extended family a few years back. It was a big deal hearing that his plane never made it to its destination. There's some evidence that he's alive, but I want to know his story. I think he's being held captive, but I don't know much more than that. It's been really hard on his family. Story 9, Edward Leedskalnin, builder of the Coral Castle in Florida. That dude was 5'2" and was moving huge pieces of coral by himself. He stated that he figured out how the Egyptians built the pyramids, yet never told anyone the actual method. And with that, how the pyramids were built. Mathematically, the Great Pyramid is impossible to be built with today's technology, as perfect as it is, and in under 20 years. The numbers all the way around are just mind-boggling, not to mention all the other absolutely perfect crap the Egyptians cranked out. That is, statues, obelisks, temples, etc. Lastly, what the actual heck happened to Nikola Tesla's documents? I know the government confiscated all his stuff after he died, but where are they now? What inventions have been created from them? Etc. Story 10, the book was titled The Secret, A Treasure Hunt, which was published in America. It contains 12 paintings and 12 verses of poems, I think. According to the book, it tells of the location of treasures throughout the U.S. What you need to do is match a painting with a verse, solve the riddle for the location, then dig. According to Wikipedia, only 3 out of the 12 treasures had been found. I find it interesting because not only were they able to set up an elaborate treasure hunt, they did it without anyone finding out the location before the book was published. Story 11, a couple women in Niagara Falls, USA have been found dismembered over the past couple years. Not really sure the time frame. Anyway, I work in news, and one day I was sent to a call of the FBI being on scene at a house that allegedly a neighbor saw a severed man in the early morning. Well, I'm sent out there, and other news stations are there as well. Knocking on doors and shooting video of FBI agents bring boxes in and out of the house. Everyone is packing up, and I want to talk to one more neighbor. I get back to my car, and a younger man rolls up on me in his car and asks about the story. I told him not sure. Could all be hearsay. Still could be for all I know. And he tells me his aunt was dismembered a few years ago. I'm like, okay, have a nice day. I get in my car and book it back to my station. I tell my coworkers, and one of them swears the young man is the guy who has been dismembering the women in the falls. I still wonder who it is and if that was really him. I doubt it, but you never know. It's interesting. I wouldn't be surprised if there is an assassin in that area. Story 12, Green Boots on Mount Everest. No one knows for sure who he is, but his body disgustingly gets and was used as a way market for people climbing the mountain. It's believed the body was removed at one point, as it was found kind of shoved down the mountain. But to this day, people still don't know who on earth he is. He just keeled over, likely got lost and just died. The creepy part is that his clothing and mostly himself is fully intact, and due to how difficult it would be to remove his body, it just stays up there. Story 13, what the purpose of the Great Pyramids are. We still to this day do not know. It brings me great joy and even greater intrigue that we have yet to figure this out. It's also highly disheartening and upsetting, since it seems it would be vitally important to our society. They were not tombs. They have many chambers and tiny tunnels with unknown purposes. We are missing a large chunk of historical knowledge. I wish there was more fervor for this gap in our historical understanding. Story 14. For years, I was obsessed with the lifeboat that was found on Bouvet Island, just because of how remote it is, and I tried to imagine what it would be like to be stranded out there. It is one of the most remote islands in the world. A couple of years ago, a Redditor found a reference to a Russian boat that had spent 3 days on the island due to bad weather and was then lifted out by helicopter, solving the mystery. It was almost disappointing knowing what really happened. Story 15, Cicada 3301. Basically, it was, I guess still is, this ARG-like scavenger hunt, which involved cracking codes, decrypting, etc., that was started by this mysterious organization called Cicada 3301 to find intelligent individuals some years back. No one really knows why exactly this organization started it, and who exactly Cicada 3301 is, but some have speculated that it was started by the CIA or NSA in order to recruit new agents or something. It still might potentially be going on, but Cicada 3301 hasn't released any more clues since 2017. This guy on YouTube did a whole investigation on it. Story 16, what happened to Louis Leprince? For context, Louis Leprince was a Frenchman who is largely regarded as being the true creator of the motion picture camera, despite Thomas Edison being credited. He reportedly had a prototype years before Edison even had started really toying with the idea. One day, Louis was to get on a train to visit family in France and then travel to New York to publicly unveil his invention. When he got on the train, he was never seen again by anyone. There's a lot of theories around what happened to Leprince. The most prominent, and one I personally believe, is that Edison, who had knowledge of Leprince's advances with the technology, had sent people to either capture or end him. There's even a theory saying that his brother, who was the last and only person to see him when he boarded the train, got rid of him to collect the inheritance that Louis was to get from their late mother's passing. The real issue is that no one will ever truly know since it happened over a century ago. So for all intents and purposes, Louis Leprince is forgotten to time. Story 17, Janine Vaughn. My dad and I have been looking at this case a lot. It's really bugged him all this time. This is one of those cases where they just give up on it after a couple years. Crime Stoppers always say to contact them if they know or think they have any info, and my dad did, and they basically laughed at him and said, "Yeah, right, whatever." He called in because he thinks he knows who the murderer is and why. He thinks it's his neighbor across the road from them when they were still living in Bathurst. Dad can't remember what he looked like or what his name was, as the alleged murderer never talked or showed his appearance often. He had a red car that was always on his driveway no matter what, until around the day that Janine went missing. My dad noticed something off, as the red car no longer sat in the driveway for about a week. The day after she went missing, Dad saw that something was up with the bumper. It was dented and barely hanging on. Then when he saw it again, the bumper was fine. My dad never saw him again after that. Something was off with that man. On New Year's Eve last year, Dad and I spent nearly all night stalking that man and going over the case. My dad works with a police officer of some sort and told him about this and asked if they could investigate. He said yes. So they are currently looking into it, and we might not hear from them for decades maybe. Story 18. This is a small one, but what happened to Flight 19? American flight in the Bermuda Triangle will avenge torpedo planes, and they all go off course and fall into the ocean one by one, unable to find their way home. But we don't know where they went, or what happened to them, or why a flying boat sent after them crashed, and how no remains were found anywhere. Another that perplexes me is the story of how life began, and if we all stem from just one cell or is multiple ones existed billions of years ago. I really hope for the second one, because if it's the first, would that technically be incest but with cells? Story 19, in 1929, a black man was found dead on the side of the 3C highway, just outside of Sabina, Ohio. He had no identification except for a piece of paper with the address 1118 Yale Avenue, Cincinnati, Ohio. It was a vacant lot. He was embalmed and displayed in hopes someone would recognize and claim him. No one ever did. Instead, he became a tourist attraction for over 1 million visitors until he was buried in 1964. He was nicknamed Eugene. During this time, his body was stolen for pranks, and he was found on the Ohio State University campus on a bench in 1958. Who was he, and how did he die? Story 20. People have often speculated that Elijah may have had something to do with Fard's disappearance, but I don't think so. Simply because of what was essentially his position as Fard's chief apostle, Elijah would have been next in line for the top spot. I think he'd have stood to lose vastly more than he'd have gained by assassinating Fard. Although Elijah did claim to be the last person to see him. My suspicions have always been more toward the police, as Fard was repeatedly arrested and told to leave Detroit and to stop preaching black supremacy, or members of pre-existing black religious movements at the time, such as the Moorish Science Temple. Fard was reputed to have been a member at one time, and was rumored to have ended its leader, Noble Drew Ali. Whoever he was, Fard had no shortage of enemies. As for Malcolm, it's definitely possible that it was done on Elijah's order, but it seems more likely to me that it was carried out at the behest of those in Elijah's inner circle. Malcolm's prominence and rapid ascension through the ranks of the nation made him an object of jealousy and ridicule among other prominent members. I've always felt that Farrakhan had something to do with it, or at the very least, he was privy to what was going down. He all but admitted as much on national TV in front of one of Malcolm's daughters, Story 21, the Anglin brothers, who overcame the odds of surviving by traveling over freezing cold water with a raft made of raincoats. People say they drowned, but every birthday of their mothers, she anonymously received flowers, and at her funeral, two random women showed up but hid their faces. I just think it's amazing how it happened. Also, they didn't die because, like 2 years after they escaped, a letter was sent to the FBI saying if there was no punishment, he would come forward and reveal himself, but never did. If you somehow don't know what this is, it's the only people to escape an island prison that was meant to be impossible to escape from, called Alcatraz. Story 22, Kayla Berg. I grew up in a town about 30-ish minutes away. I was around 10 or 11 when she disappeared. It's incredibly scary to me that someone could go missing in such a quiet town. You might remember this case as the girl they thought was in the Hey Walter video. It was since disproven that it was her, and the video is fake. My sister now lives close to Antigo, in a very wooded area with not a lot of people. One day when she was driving home, a ton of cop cars sped past, which is very unusual for the area. According to the guy at the gas station, who knows everything about anything there, they were searching the main suspects, Kevin Kilcheski, grandmother's property. I'm unsure whether they found anything, but it's been so long that the evidence is probably gone. I think this case hits home to me because she was so young, 15. I don't remember hearing any coverage on it, but of course I was still a kid that wasn't interested in watching the news. I doubt her disappearance will ever be solved either. Story 23, where did my great-uncle go? So, my paternal grandfather had two older brothers. For convenience sake, I'll call my eldest brother A, the middle brother B, and my own grandfather C. They were born in Korea around the late 1910s, early 1920s. Meaning, like many other Koreans of that generation, they were dirt poor. So in order to earn some money, B and C went to Japan to do odd jobs and to get educated. During their stay in Japan, A would contact them and ask, to put it nicely, for money to be sent over. It was during this time B went missing, and the generally accepted version of accounts in my family is that he got so stressed about the constant wheedling for money that he just up and abandoned everything to go to Korea. As I said, that's just the accepted version. No one really knows why he left or where to. Story 24, how the pyramids were actually made and what technology the Egyptians had at that time. I believe they were way more advanced than we think they were. The fact that some stones, which weighed more than any machine today, could lift, were perfectly stacked on top of each other with perfect precision. I also believe they had some kind of saw to cut the rock. There is evidence of saw marks everywhere. I 100% believe that the Egyptians and similar civilizations had access to technology that we are not aware of. Story 25, the sinking of the SS Orang Medan. I mean, Supermassive Games thought it would be a great game idea too. Like, as far as I know, it supposedly sank, but actually no one can confirm that. Because apparently the Medan wasn't officially listed on the list of which ships are in the ocean. An SOS call gets signaled out to anybody listening, and that's the last thing someone ever heard of that ship. And upon further looking into the matter with an exploration crew, the whole goddamn crew of the Medan is dead. Even the ship's dog was dead. Just frozen in motion, like they all died of shock or fear, with no obvious signs of a normal death, like, what the duck? Story 26, definitely the lost colony of Roanoke. It was the first attempt of establishing an English colony in America in 1585. The first attempt was a failure, but on the second attempt in 1587, the colony became known as the Lost Colony because of their unexplained disappearance. The second colony was left there for another 3 years until 1590, when English ships